let's get into the main story of the day, which is Warhammer 40K. Warhammer 40K has been getting fan backlash for shit. Are you guys familiar with this story?
Yeah. I mean, it's been going pretty woke and whatnot for a while now, but
Well, so
it's just now that everything's in the public eye and the zeitgeist because of, like, the video game shit is getting... So now everyone's paying attention to this stuff.
So for people who are not familiar with the story, essentially, Games Workshop published a work that had a couple of lines in it that were referencing to one of the most famous factions in the Warhammer 40K universe, the Custodes, which have always been throughout the history of the universe a male-dominated, or just all male.
Sons of the Emperor.
Sons of the Emperor. Yeah, they have like gene alteration. They have they're biologically created super soldiers, and my understanding is that the Custodes are the most famous / most powerful faction in the Warhammer 40K universe. I want to start playing it. I just don't have the few $1,000s you need to invest into your miniatures. So
yeah, it's you got to dedicate yourself to it.
Yeah,
that's your only hobby if that's going to be your hobby.
Basically.
Well, and I need exactly
whole board games to it and rules, and every character has its own like skills and rules to it. And
hundreds of books.
It's crazy.
And Games Workshop has, they're in every like major like hobby store
for sure.
And I mean, the benefit of that for them was they made like a couple billions of dollars during COVID, because it was like all people could do was like maybe get together,
paint my minis,
buy my minis, you know, for yeah. But I mean, obviously Warhammer 40K has gotten a lot more attention in the zeitgeist ever since Henry Cavill started talking about making the show. So I think that this was my understanding of this is that this is Amazon kind of moving the levers behind the scenes, telling Games Workshop, hey, you need to...
No, I don't think so.
You don't think so?
Nope.
Can you expand on that? Why? I mean,
no, I can't.
Well,
why not?
It seems
it's because Amazon... What, does Amazon own them?
No.
Well, that project, the Warhammer 40K project with Henry Cavill is going to be an Amazon Prime exclusive.
Yeah,
they're not going to be.
That has nothing to do with Game Workshop. Basically, like just throwing a chick in it.
Well, they need to get. I mean, if they want the Custodes, which are probably Henry Cavill's leading the project. The Custodes are probably going to be. The Imperium are probably going to be the main faction in the show.
Yeah, we haven't heard anything about the show changing anything. It's just all of a sudden Game Workshop is like, yeah, chicks have always been in the Custodes and whatnot, basically gaslighting the fans. And everyone's like, no, it's that you're changing lore now. Go fuck yourself. We're just going to 3D print all of our stuff now.
Yep.
Yeah, they seem pretty, Games Workshop seems pretty strict on their stuff. On a game I put out in the show, Total War Warhammer, a fan base really wanted this certain unit to come out, and they're like, that's not in the lore. We're not even gonna humor you. And
so
people looked into it, and they're like, well, technically it's not, but people still wanted to see the unit in the game. They're like, nope, not even humoring you.
So there, they cared about the lore, but
yeah, they're like, nope, it's not a real thing. We don't care.
Well, I mean, so my understanding is Henry Cavill has made zero. I mean, he's not touching it. The conversation. There is
probably smart.
Well, there is there's a quote unquote leak on 4chan, which isn't obviously a reputable source in any capacity.
No, noted.
But they're saying that Henry Cavill has, like, this person claims to be a grunt inside of the Games Workshop company, and
a cog.
A cog in the war machine. And apparently Henry Cavill has he said, reverse course on this, or you're going to do it on your own. He's got and honestly, Henry Cavill is kind of like, honestly, he would, if anyone would do it, it would be him.
It would be him.
He doesn't seem like the kind of guy who like screws around with that shit. His passion for Warhammer and the amount he's contributed to its popularity is significant.
It's extreme. Yeah, he doesn't mess around with that kind of stuff, I don't think. I think you're right. I think if they did start going off lore or start making him do stuff he didn't want to do, or that's true, to the lore. Not even what he wanted to do, because he would follow the lore to a T.
Well, especially
So if they're gonna make him do not that. I think he'd say, "Fine, do it yourself then."
Well, and if he's gonna,
it'd be like so far down, like because he's been developing the show for a while now, hasn't he?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean
so
that news was broke
wouldn't it be like
2
so
years
far
ago,
down,
3
like the
years ago.
story wormhole, to where it's like, all right, now you got to change a character to be a female or whatever.
Well,
it's like, well, then that changes like fucking everything about the character then.
Well, and Henry Cavill's walked away from other projects. I mean, he's gone.
Sure.
He left The Witcher.
Yeah, that was supposed to go for like 7 seasons too.
Yeah. So Henry Cavill seems like the kind of guy who's like The Witcher. He was a huge fan of that. He saw, I mean, for anyone who's not a Henry Cavill fan, a point needs to be made that he sat in that universe for a minute. Like, he didn't walk away immediately. He let them kind of butcher The Witcher for a few seasons.
He definitely, I remember seeing, he made different quotes. Like, Geralt wouldn't do this. He wouldn't do that. You're making a mistake to his character.
Yeah, it's basically the showrunner and writers were like, he's really hard to work with just because, he wanted to follow the lore and stuff and be true to his own character. I mean, the same thing was said about Jenna Ortega in Wednesday.
Yeah,
She's like, Wednesday wouldn't do that and changes in script and whatnot. So.
Yep, I remember hearing that.
I love these actors because first off, the actors are playing the characters, and if they do actually, what Henry Cavill brought to the table was his knowledge of Gerald. I mean, if you are working with these actors, Gerald.
He's an old man that lives next door.
Do not bully me for having mispronunciated. I am not personally a Witcher fan. I'm not deep in that lore.
How dare you?
It's not worth. I'm just kidding. I'm sure
so
it's
worth
great. Roll my eyes.
I've only played part of the third game, so I can't really say anything.
But I mean, for
bunch of normies.
But actors who actually come to the table and add something to their story by telling you how this plays out. I mean, the fact that writers and screenwriters have such a difficult time working with these actors just goes to show they have zero ability to adapt.
Well, a lot of the times now, if you're going to be hired as a writer in Hollywood, adapting something, they try to make sure that you've never read, played, or seen anything that you're adapting, so they can make their own changes and whatnot. It's like almost like a requirement. It's like, instead of like having you like do a little homework, checking out the lore and whatnot, it's like, don't look at anything that previously happened.
Don't touch it.
We're changing shit.
Which is kind of the opposite with how Peter Jackson did the Lord of the Rings trilogy. In The Return of the King, when you had the Ride of the Rohirrim, you were
epic.
That when the cavalry charged down the hill, you were in the front if you had read that. If you had read the original Lord of the Rings trilogy and understood the weight and significance of this moment narratively in the original work, Peter Jackson only let people who had read the original trilogy in the front of that charge, in that scene, in that moment. Right. And I'm like, oh, dude, that's freaking amazing. That's how you need to do it. Yeah. Reward the people who are loyal to the fandom, and maybe you could create something culturally impactful as Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, I mean, with Lord of the Rings, like a lot of Tolkien fans, I won't say a lot, but some were pissed when the first one came out, and it's like he's changing too much or whatnot. And it's like, yeah, you have to take stuff out, switch stuff around in order to adapt it to film. But he just said in the interview, it's like, we're still trying to convey Tolkien as best we can. It's like, we're not putting our own shit in it. It's just,
Yeah, I mean...
And nowadays, it's just... Every writer in Hollywood just wants to self-insert into their own.
Yeah. It's frustrating. It ruins a lot of things. It frustrates me. When it comes to Warhammer 40K, I mean, the decision was ultimately made by Games Workshop. It's their published work that had this in it. They are the ones who followed it up with clarification, saying, "Yeah, there have always been female custodes in the universe," and then the fandom is just pissed at it. So you have an article saying Warhammer players canceling their subscriptions and boycott Games Workshop. I mean, this fandom is like so deathly loyal.
Yeah, I mean, if you're willing to spend thousands of dollars on this stuff, it's like they're gonna end up just buying their own 3D printer and making their own stuff. So
and Games Workshop is self-anointed a models company. Like their company makes the models. That's where they get their money. That's where they're at. That's if people aren't going to buy their models and if they're going to 3D print.
That's a hefty chunk.
Exactly. You're going to get a few book sales. Like D&D has, like, they license all the miniatures and stuff like that too. They have all the different published books, but they only come out with like one published book every like year and a half, 2 years, if that. And everything else that they have is pretty much players going homebrew. And that's why do you remember that news that broke? I think it was either last year or the year before, where Wizards of the Coast tried to like well, I don't remember what it was. Basically, they tried putting out some sort of version of the book or some sort of version of their rules that said if you are creating any work related to Game of Thrones or to Dungeons and Dragons, thank you, it is the property of Wizards of the Coast, even if you're making it yourself. And then the fandom just
That's some Blizzard shit going on. That's Blizzard shit.
I'm not saying they shouldn't. I'm not saying they...
Well, it's like, wasn't Magic or whatever, Magic the Gathering, the one that like had a Lord of the Rings, they went on a Lord of the Rings bit, and they had an Aragon card, and you just turned them black?
Black Aragon is... Oh, that's a different conversation. I am so...
But it's just these companies just fucking with the lore or whatnot, just throwing like little things in, and it's pissing people off. It's like,
and it's like, so first off, I'll never spend any money with Wizards of the Coast ever again, or any company related to them.
They've been crazy for a while.
I homebrew all of my games. All of my miniatures are either 3D printed or bought through like Etsy or something, like a third-party source. So no money from my pocket is going to Hasbro or Wizards of the Coast if I can avoid it ever. So that, I mean, I didn't actually realize that Hasbro owned Wizards of the Coast, owns D&D and Magic the Gathering. I didn't realize that until like this last year.
I bet it's a clusterfuck of licensing and who owns who and
licensing shit sucks. I hate it. But the Warhammer stuff, I hope that first off, I want Games Workshop to just backtrack. Honestly, it would be so...
They won't.
They won't.
They're not going to.
I wish they would.
This is final.
Then I hope they go under. I mean, this is like one line of text in like their book and like their work. I wonder if I could find the original source. Okay, so it's the Adeptus Custodes.
The Codex.
The Codex.
That's right.
Okay, so I don't know how visible that is. I can't zoom in anymore, but basically it's one line of text that says. Positioned at a spot where she could observe the actions of every crew member, be they in the instrumentation pits, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's like one pronoun of she in there, and the entire fandom goes ape shit. First off, I love it. Like if you're going to point to that, and the fans are going...
I can see that just like reading and whatnot, and you're like, blah, 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 and then she could, wait, what?
So honestly, when it comes to Games Workshop and Warhammer 40K, they get what they deserve. I mean, honestly, it's if you're gonna fuck with something so, first off, it's not even one of those things that would be easy to fix. Like all of the lore says this thing, and you're just like, no, it's always been the case that one
hundreds
core
of
concept,
books.
That one core concept is just fundamentally wrong and foobar. You're not gonna fix that in my mind. You can't. Like. Why don't you make... I mean, there are female, like, factions in the Warhammer universe.
There's a whole chapter of Space Marines, but they're female, the Battle Sisters. They have a whole thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A whole chapter that's all their own.
If you're insistent
we just want our own male space with our male locker rooms.
Yeah, can't we have our safe space?
And the chick kicks in the door.